Hi, I'm Debbie Schwartz, founder of Road to College and the Paying for College 101 group. And today we're going to talk about merit scholarships, what they are, and the information you need to find them and how you can actually go about to find them for your students. So, if you can put in the chat, love to know who's here in terms of what year in high school your student is. If your student is in 10th grade, 11th grade, if you started looking for merit scholarships. I assume if you're a family with a student in 11th grade, hopefully you've been doing college research. That would be great. Okay, good. I'm always happy to see families with 10th grades here and 9th grade because you're just kind of a jump start on everything you need to learn. Let me also set up, you guys, I'm fine either way. If you want to put questions in chat or in the official Q&A, I will look in both places, so it's not a big deal. I have slides. I'm going to go through slides, but feel free to ask questions as I'm going through what I want to share with you, and I will kind of look over periodically to see if there's any questions I should address. Okay, so let me get started and share my slides. Okay, again, one last time, if you can just confirm that you are seeing my slide, which is the title page. Thank you. Perfect. Okay, so as I mentioned, we're going to talk about merit scholarships. The reason why we focus so much on merit scholarships is because I'm trying to help stack the odds in your favor. So people aren't just like hoping if their student will get money or hoping you'll get scholarships from the college. You can actually do the research to properly design your students' list so that you can make it more likely that your student will get scholarships, and then more likely that you'll be able to afford the schools that your student has applied to. Okay, agenda, we know it. We're going to talk about merit scholarships, going to talk to you a little bit about other terminology that you may or may not have heard about. We're going to talk about tips for building the college list, and then I'm going to show you a tool that we have, which we think makes it all much easier. So I'm going to start off with this story. It is a true story. Actually, one of the things I was doing right before my computer froze was trying to find a post from somebody in the Facebook group, Paying for College 101 Facebook group just the other day, which kind of proves this point. But this is a story from like probably about 2 years ago. It comes up every year. And it's not just a story. These people, this family reached out to us trying to have us help them. Unfortunately, the later you wait in the process, it becomes a little harder, or really what I should say is the options become more limited. But basically, this student ended up applying to 6 schools, don't know how strategic or balanced the list was. And well, actually, it probably wasn't that balanced as the mother is saying, that 4 of them were reaches. He got into only 2 schools out of the 6, and the other 4 he was waitlisted. And of the 2 schools he got accepted to, only one was a real option because only one was one that they could afford, and the other one was unaffordable, but he still applied to it. And so now the question is, they're only down to 2 schools, one with this outrageous price tag, which 2 years ago was $82,000, which right now we're seeing price tags in the $90,000 and above. And they didn't qualify for aid, or their choices between another school that the student wasn't as thrilled about, but maybe was more affordable. So the reason why I share this is because this is what can happen if you don't build your students' list with them strategically. And you might have to limit their options, and you might have to you should have the conversation with them about what your family budget is and how you determine if a school is affordable or not. And it's still okay if your student wants to apply to some schools which maybe you're not quite sure if it's going to turn out to be affordable. or they might want to apply to some rich schools, which you may know off the bat aren't affordable for you, but they just want to feel like to see if they can get in. If your student wants to do that and you're okay with it, that's fine. These are family decisions. Just have that conversation ahead of time so that if they get in, you don't feel that your emotions take over. And then at that point, you're figuring out, oh my God, how do we pay for this? And then we're going to start taking out loans. So, you're applying to college and figuring out how to pay for college is really a crossroads of emotions. It's dealing with your kids and your finances. So it's a tough combination of those three things kind of colliding together. So most families don't realize, that they do have more control over how they're going to pay for college. Of course, we want to focus today on the free money, and we want to help you maximize the free money. And free money is financial aid, which might be for need-based families, definitely merit scholarships. Private scholarships do fall into free money, and I'm not opposed to private scholarships, but what I always say is I like to work on something where there's a bigger return on my time and investment. And the largest scholarship your student is going to get, if you play this game well, and to some extent it is a game, is the largest scholarship is going to come directly from the college itself. Private scholarships can help. They're going to take a lot more time, and they're going to be piecemeal. They're going to come in $1,000, maybe $5,000. And then the other thing about private scholarships is they're not usually renewable. So whatever work your student did for the first year, they're going to have to repeat for 4 years. Whereas merit scholarships, and we'll talk about that more, are renewable, and it's something your student will get every year that they're at college. As you know, your money is coming from whatever savings you've been able to do over the past 18 years. Maybe you have other relatives that might be willing to help out. And a lot of people do figure out, that they might be able to cash flow more from their current income. They reduce their costs in other areas, and they shift, if they can reduce their expenses, they shift that money over to paying for college. And then ultimately, if there isn't enough money from your savings and income, and you may have gotten free money, but there still could be a gap. At that point, you have to decide, how am I going to cover the gap? Most people do cover it with loans, and the two major sources of loans are the government and private loans. I'm just going to explain really briefly, although I don't have a slide to detail it out because that's like a whole nother presentation. Starting this July, federal student loans for parents are changing. This is something that was passed in the Big Beautiful Bill this past summer. It really goes into effect in July of 2026. And the major change is previously, up until this year, Parent Plus loans a parent could borrow whatever the gap was between what they couldn't pay themselves and what the cost of attendance was at a school. So parents could borrow $60,000 if they needed to per year, or what they basically had a fallback opportunity in Parent Plus loans, that was a loan that could cover whatever the remaining cost was that they couldn't find other funding sources for. And although some people might have been denied, the majority of people, it's not a credit-based loan, and the majority of people were able to borrow the loan. That is changing as of July. Starting this July, parents, there is a cap of $65,000 that both parents can borrow together per student. So for each student, the family can only borrow $65,000. Plus, there's a limit per year of only borrowing up to $20,000 a year. So I just kind of share this because parents don't always think about all of the what the limitations are and where they're going to be able to get money. They didn't have to before starting in July. And if you need more than $20,000 a year, you're going to have to borrow from private lenders. Not that that is bad, but you just should understand what the options are. So that's my quick lesson on what's happening with loans, but please be on the lookout. We're going to do a lot more sessions in detail about what Parent Plus loans are, what these new limits are, and what the family's options are in terms of private loans. But it's good to understand this as part of the research process and as you're building your budget and deciding how much you're willing for your student to take out in loans and how much you as a family are willing to take out in loans. So your student's college list drives everything. It's a phrase we use a lot. It's really important to understand. The lists drives your costs and it drives your student and your family's options. So what does that mean? Obviously, whatever colleges are on your student's lists, that's going to be the colleges that your student potentially could get into, and those are going to be your final costs. So you're going to see as we go through some of the slides, you should be able to estimate what your cost is of sending your student to a college before your student even decides to apply. And again, this should be part of your research process. And that was the post I was trying to find when my computer crashed, is a parent very eloquently described what she believes are the important parts of the process. This was just yesterday in the group. And she emphasized, which I was so happy to see, that how important research is and how possible it is to estimate your cost before you get too heavily involved emotionally, and your student does with a school. And the other thing that the college list does drive is how stressful the process is. And what that means is the more colleges your students apply to, the more essays they need to do, the more deadlines you need to keep track of, and it just could become overwhelming. This is not to say don't apply to the schools your student is interested in. We do see on average that students are applying to more schools than they used to. When I say that, like 10 years ago, I think the average now is about 6 schools per student. It might have been closer to 5 or 4 10 years ago. And it is not unusual to definitely see students apply to 10 or 12. I think the number of schools that your student applies to is going to be partly determined by how selective the schools are on your students list. The more elite or selective the schools are that your student wants to apply to, then you have to spread out the options and the risk, and your student's going to have to apply to more schools where there is a higher certainty of them getting in or a higher certainty of them receiving money. And that kind of goes to the last comment. Yeah, again, see this story a lot, especially in the March, April timeframe. Oh, I'm so surprised my student didn't get any merit money from this college. Well, if the family had done maybe more research or better research, they could have known ahead of time that that might have been a school that doesn't even offer merit scholarships. And it sounds so simple, but that happens a lot. Parents, their students apply to schools and they don't even research or see, does that school even offer merit scholarships at all? So you obviously want to make sure your student is applying to the schools that offer merit scholarships and that they have a higher likelihood of receiving them, because you can't get money from a school your student didn't even apply to. So what is merit aid? I would expect that maybe most people know, but we'll just kind of go over this quickly. Merit aid is basically a tuition discount that schools use to recruit the students that they want, and it's not based on financial need. So in some schools, and again, we'll look at this, colleges are giving merit to lots of students. So it truly does, unfortunately, might feel like a discount. At other schools, they're giving merit, but they're not giving it blanketly across the student body. They are giving it more selectively, and it could be based on a certain tier of grades. It could be based on a competitive application that your student has to submit, or it could be based on some sort of talent. So, so this idea of tuition discount varies a little bit, but at the end of the day, if your student is receiving merit scholarships, it is reducing your cost of sending your student to that college. Just to emphasize, The merit scholarships are not based on need. Need-based money is given out based on information that colleges receive from the FAFSA and an additional form called the CSS profile. Sometimes you will see, though, that colleges ask for families to fill out the FAFSA in order to even be reviewed and for merit scholarships. And that from what I've been told, that is primarily because the college wants to make sure that the family truly isn't eligible for need-based aid. And they also want to make sure that if they're going to give merit scholarships and the student might potentially be eligible for need-based aid, that the two amounts of money won't exceed the cost of attendance. So there are cases where schools are asking for the FAFSA to be filled out, but they're not necessarily using that money to make determinations to receive merit scholarships. They just want to know that the family isn't eligible for need-based aids. So who is merit aid best for? I personally think it's really the major tool that families have who are in what I call the donut hole. These are families that make too much and they're not going to receive need-based aid, but they don't make enough that they can pay the full price of college, from their savings. So this is the strongest leverage and tool that families have if they want to reduce their cost of college. It's to find the colleges that can offer their student merit. And usually at the schools that are offering your student merit, you're not going to also be a family that's going to receive need-based aid. Your student should be a strong applicant for the school, meaning that academically they're in the top 25, maybe we can expand that to 40% of all students. So going back to what I said previously, colleges are using merit scholarships to attract the students they want. They want stronger academic students because, that kind of lifts their academic profile, even though there's been a lot of poo-pooing and people don't use the rankings that much anymore. They still play a role kind of in the world of college admissions among colleges. So the stronger the academic student base is, that also kind of lifts their rankings. If you as a family are interested in pursuing merit scholarships, and there's a phrase you maybe are going to start to hear a lot called chasing merit. Chasing merit just means that you're going to spend a lot of time doing research to find the colleges that can offer your student the merit and what steps they might have to take at those colleges. But what you're going to find, and I'm going to show you a slide later that kind of backs this up, is that the colleges that offer the most merit are going to be private schools, much more so than the flagship public schools. Or they tend to be stronger regional schools, whether they're private or public schools. That kind of goes to the idea that colleges are using this money to attract students. It could be that they need to attract them because of the location of the school. There are a lot of great schools, but they may not be in metropolitan areas that are popular places where the students want to attend. And of course, again, they're trying to attract that stronger academic student to their college. And I'm just going to emphasize this again, that if you're in the process of looking for merit scholarships, please do research. Please kind of, as much as possible, take out the emotion of these dream school idea, or my student always wanted to go to this type of a school. There is a place for those types of schools on the list, but make sure that the majority of list is really balanced and you've built it strategically. So there are 3 categories of merit scholarships, and these aren't official categories. These are just honestly categories we put together to make it easier to explain the different types of merit scholarships that are out there. There are scholarships I would call automatic, and they are based on a student's GPA or test scores. They are automatic for 2 reasons. One is, and we'll show you an example, it could be because a college puts on their website a chart a table that's very clear and that shows that if your student is in this range, whether it's a GPA or a test score, that then they are automatically going to be eligible for a certain amount of merit. So those schools are very transparent. They have their information on their website, and you can, very clearly ahead of time know, oh, my student is going to fall into this category of merit scholarships, and we can kind of bet that we can know that they're going to receive that money, and we can include that in our estimate of what that college is going to cost. So that's kind of one category of automatic. Another is that a school might not be as transparent, at least on their website within the charts that I'm talking about, but they review every application that is submitted and consider it for merit. So in that case, they're not asking for a separate application. Every application that is sent through is going to be also considered for merit. So that's kind of another version of what we call automatic. Competitive is somewhat, as the name implies, that it's not going to be given to everybody, every student who applies. It may not be that every student is even considered. Usually, in a more competitive merit scholarship situation, the student has to send in a separate application. They may have to do additional essays. This is kind of where the process becomes a little bit more stressful. Sometimes the college, it's part of the regular admission process that there is additional applications for students to apply to merit scholarships. Other times, a student has to apply, whether it's early action or regular, and then the college reaches out after and says, we'd like you to go further. We'd like you to apply to the honors program, or we'd like you to apply to this, presidential scholarship. So it can go both ways, but in either case, it's usually additional work. It's important additional work. And so I would just make your student prepared that that might be coming down the line, whether it's part of the summer, fall time frame when they're doing all of their applications, or it could be in the January or December time frame once they've submitted to a college, and then the college reaches out and says, we'd like you to apply for these scholarships, or we'd like you to be part of our honors program. And then the last type of merit scholarship is based on a talent. This doesn't only have to be at, specialty colleges that might be just for music or theater. It could be within a larger school, but they have a special merit scholarship, from the theater department, from the music department. And again, some schools your student doesn't even have to be majoring in that. So it's definitely, if your student has that type of talent, that it's worthwhile kind of looking at the colleges they're interested to see if they have any of these types of scholarships. What's a little different about these scholarships is that they tend to have additional deadlines. You usually need to send in a portfolio. You might have to schedule a separate date for an audition. So I just kind of put that out there that if your student is doing any of those types of scholarships, that you're aware, again, of the additional work that's entailed. And for all of these scholarships, whether it's automatic, competitive, talent, it's so important to keep track of the deadlines. And I'm going to show you some examples. There's a lot of times, and you might have read this in the Facebook group, I've seen these posts go up where a parent says, I was wondering why my student didn't hear about applying to a certain scholarship and what the deadline was. And it turns out that the information might have been sent in the student's portal. It might have been sent to the student's email. And the student wasn't aware of the email that they used for that college. And by the time they realize it, the deadline has passed. And colleges are usually pretty sticklers about this deadline. They feel it's part of the maturing process, that students should understand that there are deadlines they need to work towards and they need to be aware of. And unless there's usually huge extenuating circumstances like weather, issues, obviously there have definitely been times where there have been the fires, the floods have gotten in the way, hurricanes have gotten in the way, and colleges have extended deadlines, or if there's a real, personal tragedy in your family. But for the regular, situation, if your student misses a deadline, they might have missed an important opportunity. So this is a great time to teach them this lesson of keeping track of deadlines and, making sure that they're on top of it. Okay, so mistakes can happen, and but we want to try and avoid them. But here, oh, that's interesting. I said three common mistakes. These are really four common mistakes. So let me just mention them again. Uh, One mistake we've already kind of talked about is not having a balanced list, not being strategic in building the college list. And so it may be that your student only applies to REACH schools. Again, unfortunately, I have too many of these stories that I can just pull in the past few weeks that I'm reading on the Facebook group. This was in the past week. A parent wrote and said, my student did not get into their ED1 choice. They did not get into my ED2. And for those of you who don't know, that's early decision one, and then there's an early decision two deadline. They only got into one early action school, and we're waiting for all of these other schools. Well, everybody in the post wrote back, well, we can't help you until you, and the mother basically said, should I be worried? And everybody said, well, what other schools did your student apply to? And then she reveals that the student applied to mainly elite schools. And the scary news was that people said, yeah, you might be nervous because a lot of the elite schools, even though your student has all of the criteria and has the profile to some extent, they're still like a lottery as to whether or not they'll get in. So that family is starting to scramble a little bit and is now looking. There are always schools, usually with some open and rolling admission deadlines, and so they're going to add a few more. But they shouldn't have waited till February to figure this out, and they shouldn't have applied to just REACH schools. Another mistake is only applying or ignoring to apply to the schools where your student is academically strong. I know there's this concept of, well, if my student is a big fish in a smaller pond, are they going to get the same experience? If you do your research, if the school fits your student, socially, it can, even though they are, and it fits it financially, and it fits it academically. To fit it academically doesn't mean that it has to have an elite brand name. Usually, the students who are stronger at a school academically actually get more of the opportunities. They might get, to work with the professors. They might be asked to do more of the research. They might get the better internship opportunities. So I wouldn't ignore or downplay a school that maybe doesn't have the academic reputation or the name, I should say really more the name reputation that you are used to. Because if your student is strong at that school and that school offers your student money, they're going to stand out, which is actually maybe more important than having a brand name on their resume where they were just one of the all the students that went there, but they couldn't really stand out because they were competing against others, such strong students. Another mistake is looking and writing a school off because of the sticker price without doing the further research to know, does that school offer merit scholarships? Because in a lot of cases, the sticker price is not the final price that you will pay. And then, of course, we already talked about deadlines and how that could be a merit killer. So here's an example of an automatic merit aid that is given by Miami University of Ohio, happens to be a public university. And these charts are directly from their website. I cleaned up this slide. I used to have 4 years of charts on the website just to kind of show the progression. But why I am showing these two charts, and the one on the left is for the students who are applying right now, and it's the merit scholarships that they could receive starting in the fall of 2026. The one on the right is the chart from last year, from 2025. In this case, the GPA and Miami University is only looking at GPA. There are other schools that sometimes, and we are starting to see a shift towards tests required more often now than they were. That definitely is a pendulum that is swinging, as you guys might all know. Before the pandemic, I'd say the majority, 90+% of schools were test required. Obviously, because of the pandemic, they had to drop that. They became test optional. Colleges actually kind of like that because it opened up their funnel of students who were applying to them, and they had more choice of the students, and they could also choose a student that might have been academically strong, that maybe didn't, it might have had a weaker test score and didn't even send their test score. So it gave them more optionality in who they could admit. But as these things go, we're also the volume of applications also overwhelmed a lot of schools because so many more students were saying, well, I don't have to send in my test score, I'm just going to apply. And schools couldn't handle or had a hard time handling the volume. And now you're seeing it's not a huge push, but we're seeing every year more and more colleges. Some of the more elite colleges are definitely returning to test required. And then kind of some colleges that also were overwhelmed with applications are starting to also put back the test requirement. But in any case, Miami is still test optional. So they are really looking at merit scholarships based on GPA. The thing that was interesting about these two charts from last year to this year is that you can see the amount of merit they are giving at the same GPA ranges has increased. In fact, for in-state students, it's almost doubled. So last year, they were saying if you had a 4.3, that they were giving out merit scholarships starting at 4,000. Now they're starting it at 8,000 for out-of-state students, which you're always going to see. And if a state school gives merit, they're always going to give more merit to an out-of-state school because the starting point, the cost of tuition is higher for those students. So for the out-of-state student, last year it was 15,000. Now they're starting it at 20,000. So my point in showing these two charts is that what colleges do with merit can change year to year. The amount they offer might change somewhat year to year. Then the criteria that they have might change year to year. On the chart, which I took off of the slide to just make it cleaner, was from 3 years ago or 2 years ago. Miami University had different GPA ranges. They had slightly lower GPA ranges. So they learned over time that, hey, we can increase the GPA that we want to get this money, and that's going to, get us maybe a stronger academic student. So they are always tweaking the requirements and the money that they're offering. The other thing I just like to point out about Miami University, or as an example, is that they are using a weighted GPA, and they call that out, but a lot of schools, in fact, the majority of schools are using unweighted GPA. So I only say that is when you are looking at these charts, make sure that you understand or it's clear if what the chart lists is a weighted GPA or unweighted GPA. And if it's unclear, that's a great question. Your student can reach out to the admissions office and ask for clarity. You really want to understand, again, had a situation where a family was using the daughter's weighted GPA. They were looking at a chart that was unweighted, and then they got merit money, but they got it at a lower level than they expected. And it was really because of this mismatch of using the wrong GPA. Here's an example of a competitive merit scholarship. The example I'm using on the left is University of Southern California, and what's important about this example is USC actually, this was maybe like a few years ago, they didn't have early action. They only had regular decision, but they had this early deadline if you wanted to apply to merit scholarships. Now they've actually instituted early action, which is a November 1st deadline, and they've also combined applying or being eligible for merit scholarships with the November 1st deadline. And I've seen that a lot more in the past 2 years with more colleges instituting early action deadlines. And some of those colleges also saying, we are only going to be considering students for merit scholarships if they apply early. And the logic behind that is that colleges want the students to get in their applications earlier. It gives the colleges more time to see who's interested in them. And if a college can offer a merit scholarship earlier and make the student more interested in the college, then they feel like they might have a leg up in that student ultimately accepting their enrollment to that college. So here is where the deadlines become important. If your student doesn't apply early action to USC, they are just not going to be eligible for merit scholarships. On the example on the right is Boston University, and they also have a December 1st deadline, which is different than their other regular decision deadlines. And they, although they are test optional, they're kind of giving you a sense of the quality or strength of a student who generally receives these merit scholarships by just giving you a sense that, students who receive these scholarships generally have SAT scores above 1,500, ACT scores above 33. So if your student might be, for BU in particular, applying and wanting to get merit scholarships and they want to apply test optional, they still can, but their application for merit scholarships should be really, really strong to overcome the fact that maybe they're not sharing test scores for the committee to evaluate. So again, just examples. The fortunate or unfortunate thing is that there are a lot of schools that offer merit scholarships, and they all do it differently. They all are going to have different deadlines. Some might, require it as part of early action. Some might require an additional application. Some might require an additional essay. And this is, again, kind of where the research comes in and the work comes in. After you've identified the schools that can offer your student merit scholarships, then you and your student are going to really have to be on top of what are the requirements that each of these schools have that you can be eligible to receive the merit scholarships. Okay, here's the section I'm going to go through kind of quickly about the data that you need to know and where you can find the data. Let me just see where I am. So the two important pieces of terminology on this slide are, and these are numbers that you're not going to be able to change. Maybe you'll have a little bit of influence, but cost of attendance is cost of attendance. That is the sticker price that a college shows on their website. They are legally required to show this cost of attendance. If you can't find it, you can Google the name of any college and say cost of attendance. Again, some colleges make it really easy. They lay it out. Other colleges put it in different pieces. They might say tuition costs are here, and then there's all these different room and board options, and then there's the fees, and so they don't kind of roll it up nicely for you. But they have to have the information. And so it's important to know the cost of attendance. It's important to know what your family's student aid index is, because that's going to give you a sense of where in the fork do you fall? Are you a family that is going to potentially be need-based aid, or are you a family that is never going to be need-based aid, and so you have to look for merit? I'm going to share, this person's asking where can you see if a school offers merit scholarships. We're going to get that in 1 minute. It's just important to you to understand this terminology, these numbers, and how colleges use it, because then it's going to make sense about which schools to look at. So the other important formula to understand is the cost of attendance minus your student aid index is your family's need. So the reason to understand the student aid index is that if you end up having a student aid index, and let's say it's 45,000. Actually, sorry, I'm going to make it higher, is 100,000, which is not crazy. It's because it's going to be dependent on your income and assets. You're never going to be probably receiving need-based aid at any school. The only option you're going to have is to receive merit scholarship. And that's, again, why it becomes so important. The other number to know is your family's budget. The government's going to determine your student aid index. The college is going to determine your cost of attendance. But you are going to determine your family's budget, and you're going to have to decide, knowing these other numbers from the government and the college, how much are you willing to pay from college based on what your savings is, and how much you may or may not be willing to borrow. That's going to determine your budget, which is a number you're going to need to know as you do the research. Good question. Cost of attendance is annual. It is not a 4-year number. So what you find on college is for 1 year. Shocking, but that is true. And merit scholarships, when merit scholarships are offered, they're also offered, the number that you see is an annual number. It's not the 4-year number. So here is a chart. It's just like a sensitivity to give you an idea of where you might fall based on your income and assets. There are other questions that are asked for student aid index, but these are the two biggest drivers of determining your students student aid index. And the biggest driver is your parent income versus assets. Let me just actually, if we can zoom in on this, well, I can't zoom in because of the way I'm set up, but if you guys focus on the column that says 200,000 and 50,000, I just wanted to show how much a jump in income impacts your SAI versus a jump in assets. So at 50,000 assets and a 200,000 income, the estimated SAI for a family of 4 is about 41,000. So can you see if you make 50,000 more in income, your SAI goes from, and you stay at the same asset level, your SAI goes from 41,000 to 57,000. So over a $10,000 jump. If you compare that to if you stayed at the same income, but you saved an additional 50,000, and wouldn't that be great? Your SAI only increases about $3,000. So that's just quickly to show you that assets are assessed at a lower rate than income. Assets are assessed at about 5.6%. So for every additional dollar you save, only 5.6% of that is going to go towards what your government thinks you should pay to college. But your income, and there's a percentage range but most people kind of hit it very quickly. Your income is assessed at about 47%. So I'm not saying I agree with this. I'm not saying I like it. It is just the fact of how the government formula works. And they've had this formula for over 10 years. It should have been something that should have been addressed, but it wasn't. So you should just know this ahead of time, that your income is going to be the biggest driver of what your SAI is. Okay, so here's some other examples so that you understand kind of like where you fall and what type of school you should be looking at. Again, this is the most important formula. Your net cost is the cost of attendance minus any money that the college is going to offer you, whether it's from need-based aid or merit scholarships. So that's how you can start to estimate what your cost is before your student even applies. You can look at the college's cost of attendance, and then I'm going to show you where you can find the estimated merit that the college might offer. But every college has a different cost of attendance. Your SAI stays the same. The reason I'm pointing this out is because at some colleges, you might be eligible for merit, for need-based aid, depends on what your SAI is. And that same SAI at other colleges, you will only be eligible for merit scholarships. And then here's where your budget comes in. It kind of doesn't matter what your SAI is on some level, but if you have a budget of 45,000, your SAI is 90,000, like the government is going to calculate whatever it is your SAI is, you're going to determine what your budget is, and nobody can influence that. At some schools, your budget might be above what the cost of attendance. At other schools, your budget's going to be below the cost of attendance. And if your budget is below the cost of attendance, the only way you're really going to make up the difference, if you're not eligible for need-based aid, is if the college offers merit, and still you might still have a gap and might have to take out additional loans. But it's really important to understand these numbers, and then you can understand where you fall relative to the college's cost of attendance, and whether or not you have any possibility of need-based aid, or you only need to look for colleges with merit. Okay, so what can the data tell you? The data is going to show you which colleges actually even offer merit. We're going to look at And all of this information is in something called the Common Data Set. I actually do a different presentation that just walks through the Common Data Set. But what we did in our tool, which I'm going to jump to in a minute, is we have compiled all of the common data sets across all colleges. So you don't have to go to each college's website and look up this information. You have it at your fingertips in a database, and you can do a reverse lookup to kind of say, oh, show me the colleges that offer merit scholarships. Show me the colleges where my child GPA or SAT or ACT score is at that 25th percentile or above. And when you can marry those two criteria, where your student is a strong academic student and the college offers merit scholarship, then you have an extreme likelihood that your student will get merit scholarships, and you can now make that estimate of what the college is going to cost you. Okay, let me get out of this and share with you the tool that we have, and we're going to look at some of this data. So this is a website that we created. It's called insights.roadtocollege.com. You can create a free account. There's some things you can do free, and then there is a monthly subscription. You can use it for a month. We have longer plans if you want to use it longer. It's all very flexible. But I'm just going to log in. Okay, I'm just going to go quickly to the data section, but here's a dashboard of different areas. We have content that you can look at. This is where you would see lists that you would save for yourself. When your student gets to the point of applying, there's an area where you can help keep track of those deadlines, which we said were so important. When your student has offers, you can now share the offers and compare them with other families. We have videos that are specific to people in this platform. You can get some additional one-on-one services if you need it. So this is just like a general overview. But the area that you're probably going to spend the most time in is this either create a new list or discover. And this is our database of the common data set information that we think is most important and most helpful for families to use. And then if you, honestly, there's a lot of data here, so I understand it can be overwhelming. There's 3,900 colleges here. So let's start doing some filtering. You can filter on any data in any of these columns. We do a default of the fields that we think are most useful and that people use the most. But if there's not a filter here, you can add a filter and it pops up all of the other columns that we might not have listed. But so let's go to one of the popular ones. Let's just start with somebody's asking, understandably, which colleges offer merit? Okay, so we have a column here that says average merit award for freshmen without need. So that is an important piece of information that comes from the common data set. If you look at an individual common data set, it's called section H. And we're going to say, show me all the colleges that offer merit, let's say, greater than or equal to $5,000. You can put in any amount that you want, but I'm just doing this to demonstrate. So the 3,900 colleges went down to 993. So all of a sudden, that list of like 3,900 colleges, well, they don't all give merit. And now all of a sudden, you've narrowed it and knocked it down to the universe of colleges that give merit that are 993. Doesn't mean that those are all the colleges that your student and you're going to be interested in, but now you're down to that smaller universe. And if I just do this, I just do a quick find to go to the column to make it easier to look. Now you can see here is the average merit award for freshmen without need at those schools. We also calculate what the net cost is. We actually do some of the work for you of what the net cost is at that school. So we take the cost of attendance and we subtract what the average merit is, and that's kind of potentially your net cost at that college. And so now you can filter further with these schools. I can go in now. I want to actually, I found the schools that offer merit. Now I want to find the schools where my student is a strong academic candidate. Remember, those are the two criteria that we talked about. School needs to offer merit. My student needs to be strong relative to that school. So I'm going to look at the 75th percentile for ACT. So what that means is that my student's ACT score is better than 75% of the students that normally enroll at that college. And that's kind of the criteria that the colleges use when they're determining how academically strong a candidate is. So, and we can put in a range here. So let's say my student had a 32. So I'm going to put in, show me all the schools where the 75th ACT, 75th percentile for ACT is between 31 and 33. And don't forget, I already have this criteria of the college offers merit of 5,000 and more. Now I've layered a second filter on it. So you can see how quickly you can start narrowing this down. We just went from 900 and something colleges, 993 colleges, I think it was, that have merit. And now we're down to 136 of those colleges are the colleges where my student is a strong candidate. Now, again, I want to start to dig in further. Maybe I want to, and I can do this a few different ways. Maybe I want to see which of those schools have the majors he or she is interested in. Maybe I want to look at which of those schools offer early action, early decision. Maybe I just want to see which of those schools are harder or to get into by looking at the acceptance rate. Maybe I want to see, do any of those schools have full tuition or full ride scholarships? Maybe I want to see which of the schools are at or below my budget because you can start looking at that information. So this is how you use the data to do the research. So somebody said the website, you can create a free account in the website. You can do up to 5 searches, but it doesn't give you access to all this data. What I'm showing you now is a paid account. It's $24.99 a month. Again, a lot of families only use this for like maybe 2 or 3 months. They do their research and then they've built their college list and then they move on. Or sometimes families in 10th grade use this for a month or two so that they can understand which schools their student might be academically strong at, what the costs of schools are, and kind of use it to start and maybe create a list of the schools that they're going to visit. So lots of different ways that people use this. The other really interesting information is we have crowdsourced offers. And what that means is those are actual offers that families share with us about the money that that the school offered them. So there is data that the college reports that's in the common data set, right? So I would call it college reported data. And then there's data that we're collecting called the crowdsourced data. And that is data that's actual offers that families are telling us that they got from these colleges. So I just clicked on Beloit. You can also, this is a pop-up, you can filter this and look at, we actually have been doing this for like over 5 years, so this goes back pretty far. But you can see we have like offers from this current year. Beloit, this is the 2026-2027 academic year. Those are students who are starting in the fall of 2026. It means that they applied this fall and winter and they're getting their decisions now. So this is what I would call live data, showing you that Beloit's pretty generous. And these are actual offers that Beloit is giving these students. You can also see the GPA ranges. You can see the SAT and the ACT scores of these students. You can see if somebody doesn't have an ACT or an SAT score listed, it means that they applied test optional. So, and then you can also see what the family's SAI is, because what that tells you is it just gives you a general, honestly, social economic sense of that family. Like for a family who has an SAI above 80,000, they're only going to receive merit mostly at most colleges. A family that has an SAI between 20 and 25, well, that's a family actually that might receive need-based aid and merit. The reason why a lot of the need-based money isn't here yet for this current admission season is because merit if a student doesn't apply early decision, the merit money is usually announced and given out earlier, and the financial aid money is usually given or disclosed like in the March timeframe. So a lot of families will come back and add the need information a little later. But this is pretty valuable information. We actually, so now, and then you can see from last year, we have families who entered in their offers, to Beloit. And again, you can see the trend is pretty similar. They're pretty generous. So I hope that is good information. Thank you. Somebody just put in the link. Let me give you one other link of a new thing that we just launched like a few weeks ago, which I think might be helpful. And this is also completely free. It's called a college comparison report. And we'll send links to all of this in the follow-up email. This report is free. You get to pick 3 colleges, and then we share a more visual report with you of the information to kind of give you an idea of what information you will get in the Insights platform. But here is a sample of that report. So somebody chose Marywood University, State University of New York, Catholic University of, I think that's of Washington, and Catholic University of America. And so when you pick these schools, this is the information we tell you. Again, we're really focused on merit because that's the tool that you can use to lower your costs. So here's the average. So we rate how generous these colleges are. And the reason and the way we rate them is we have the database, as you saw, of all the colleges that give merit. We put them into quartiles, and so we can determine what the average or what's generous of that the college offers relative to all the other colleges in the U.S. So Marywood University gives above average merit. That's above average relative to all the other colleges, the U.S. colleges. Yep. Okay. So here, see, that's the footnote. Merit aid rating is based on a national CDS, which is Common Data Set rated averages. So so the above average range is between 12,000 to 24,000. The college has told us in the Common Data Set that they offer about a little over 21,000 in merit. Parents have told us that they've received between 21,000 and 39,000 in merit. And there's always going to be outliers. So the average merit is that parents have told us about is 25,000. I actually think that's pretty close. So that basically whatever Marymount is reporting, that is what parents are receiving. So that's a good snapshot. SUNY University, not surprised. The state schools are not going to be generous as merit because they just don't have the budgets. But they might give a little. I'm in Pennsylvania. Pitt usually gives, they have like a $5,000 scholarship, or they might give a $10,000 scholarship to an out-of-state student. But don't expect merit dollar amounts of 20,000 or more from the state schools. It's not going to happen. So it makes sense that SUNY is limited in the merit aid that they offer. What they report in the Common Data Set is a little over 3,000. What parents have reported is they're barely getting anything, and what the average reported amount that a parents are getting is $1,200. So I wouldn't count on any merit if your student's applying to SUNY. Okay, let's look at Catholic University of America. They are very generous, and very generous means that they are offering merit scholarships that are above like $24,000. They report that they to the Common Data Set that their average merit scholarship is $33,000, almost $34,000. That's generous. Parents have told us that they are getting between $21,000 and $40,000, and that the average is $34,000. So those numbers line up. So again, this is research. You can do it ahead of time. For free, you can get 3 colleges in this college comparison report. If you become a paid member of Insights, you can run this report multiple times. You can do it as many times as you want. And then there is other information that we share here. Here's the cost of attendance, which I talked to you about. Here's the test scores. So you can quickly see, is my kid in the top range of the test scores? I have to say, unfortunately, You can see these are dashes. It means not that we don't have the information, it meant that these colleges did not report the information. So there's nobody forcing colleges to report data. A lot of colleges do, but they don't always report everything for lots of different reasons. And then down here is just more of your basic information about the colleges, the acceptance rate, number of undergraduates, the GPA, and that type of stuff. So let's see what time it is. It is 1:05. I'm sorry I'm running a little late. I apologize for the problems at the beginning of the hour. I know that this is lunchtime or middle of the day for people, so I am going to stop sharing my screen, but I will look at some of the questions, and whoever wants to stay on, I'll try and answer some questions that were asked earlier on. So I don't give out the actual slides, but we send a link to this presentation. It will be sent tomorrow in a follow-up email. We will send a link to the recording, and we will send a link to the tools that we talked about, the Insights tool and the college comparison tool. Actually, so please look out for that email if you want to follow up with any of these links. Let's see. Cost of attendance is an annual cost. It's not a 4-year cost. Somebody asked, does the assets include real estate market value? Good question. This is relating back to the SAI chart that we did. And as you guys, there's kind of seasons to college admissions, if you've noticed that or not. Searching for merit scholarships is an all year round season, but kind of digging into things like the SAI, the FAFSA, that usually happens in the fall because that's when parents need to know the most about it. This time of year, we're talking about appealing for the seniors. We're going to talk about loans over the summer. So I only say that is, again, look for our invitations to webinars. We will have a webinar probably in August and September all about the details of the SAI and the FAFSA, which even if you don't have to fill it out in this year, you should attend and learn about it. But to the specific question, does the asset include real estate market value? If you're just filling out the FAFSA, the assets do not include real estate. If you are filling out the CSS profile, there is a separate section that will ask you about the value of your real estate. So for colleges that use the CSS profile, and if they're using the CSS profile, they're using more of that information, they're relying on that information and not relying on the FAFSA information, they may consider your your equity in your house as part of your assets. So depending on what your financial situation is, where your assets are coming from, you might want to think more carefully and kind of research ahead of time. Again, this is great research you can do. And even ask the college and say, do you consider the equity in my home as part of the evaluation of whether or not my student might get money from the college in need-based aid? They may or may not give you an answer, but you can also, ask in different forms. People might have figured that out. Okay. For income, is this your total income or is this the net after you subtract any contributions for 401k? Good question. I didn't go into the detail. It is after any contributions to 401ks, and that's actually a new thing in the past 2 years. So yes, if you have the ability to contribute to any 401ks, you definitely should, and it would reduce your income for this purpose. Is parent assets assessed differently if they are retired? Unfortunately not. For a retired parent, you might have a lower income, so that might help you, but the assets are not treated differently just because you're retired. Can you figure out your SAI before actually doing a full FAFSA application? Yes and no. There is a site that offers an SAI estimator. I have to be honest, I've never really tested it out in detail, so I can't say how accurate it is. But what I will tell you instead is, and I didn't always give this advice until about a year ago, but now I actually think I should have been saying it all along. I think everyone and anyone should go to the government website where it's studentaid.gov. studentaid.gov, and you can create your own, and you should create a FSA ID, which you're going to need anyhow for the FAFSA, and you should fill out a FAFSA now, even if your student is not applying to college. And the reason why I say that is there is no harm. If you fill out a FAFSA, nobody sees that information. The government already knows that information because the government is actually pulling your income from the IRS. No college will see that information because your student isn't applying. The colleges can't get access to your FAFSA until your student applies and until you actually tell the FAFSA system that you want this college to have your student's information. So you might as well actually go to the source, fill out an actual FAFSA, get the experience of filling it out, create the FSA ID, which you and your student are going to need, and get your actual SAI, even though it's maybe from a year or two in advance from when your student is going to apply to college. Honestly, unless there's going to be major swings in your household income and your assets, right? Your SAI isn't going to be that different from doing it in 11th grade than when you're going to have to do it in 12th grade. So that's my best suggestion as to where you can get not just like an accurate, that is the most accurate SAI you'll get if you actually had the FAFSA run it itself. Okay. Can you touch on how merit aid works if you are eligible for need-based aid? Do you still get merit? That's a really good question. It's not a black and white answer. It's going to be dependent on the college. So some colleges like to max out and give students need-based aid first before they kind of add on merit. And the reason for that is, this might not be the only reason, but it is one reason I've heard, is because when your student is offered merit, that merit is, they're given it like for 4 years. So if your student's offered a merit scholarship, and that's why most of the merit scholarships are offered as incoming freshmen, then that merit amount is going to be available for your student as long as they meet the requirements, which, hopefully most students do. That merit money is going to be available in freshman, sophomore, junior, senior year, regardless of what happens to your financial situation. With need-based aid, you have to fill out the FAFSA every year because your need-based aid is going to be based on the results of your FAFSA. So if your income changes, if your assets change, your need-based aid may change year to year. And so colleges like to use the need-based aid budget first because also there's a chance that what you need might change every year, but also if they can fill your need and you're eligible for need-based aid, first it leaves more money in their merit budget so that they can offer to families who truly aren't going to get any need-based aid. Okay, you mentioned that the SAI determines if family is qualified for need-based aid or merit scholarship. What roughly are the SAI categories? So there aren't categories to the SAI. It's a set of questions that you have to fill out the form, but it basically will pull information from the IRS. It is not something to be afraid or nervous about. About 2 years ago, the government updated the whole process, and a major part of that update is that it automatically takes information from the IRS system and it fills out the FAFSA. In the past, it didn't do that. So that's where people made a lot of mistakes. You had to fill out every field almost by yourself. And to overcome all those mistakes, that's when the government kind of connected these two systems. So, the major categories are going to be your income, your assets, any other type of like income you might get if you're divorced, and you might get child care, and then depending on if you own if you're a small business owner or if you own a farm, there's some other questions. It's not a lot of questions, so that's why we focus on income and assets, because those are the two biggest areas that are going to impact it. Okay, not a silly question, but somebody said, what is considered a reach school? I can define this in two different ways. A reach school is any school where your students' academic stats kind of put it at below the 50th percentile for that school. So meaning your student, academically doesn't stack up as strong relative to all the students that those colleges generally accept. So that could be any school for your student could be considered a reach school. Normally, the term reach school generally also refers to the schools that are the hardest to get into, the Ivies, the near Ivies, anything, quite honestly, that has, a 15% or lower admit rate. Some people even believe that, schools that are 25% and lower are also, becoming more and more lottery type in terms of getting in. So that term reach refers to the really selective elite schools, but it also can refer to any school that your student is applying to where they are on like the slightly lower half of the academic scale relative to the other students who normally go there. So the schools that are announcing free tuition for families below a certain income threshold with typical assets, how do you figure out what they consider to be typical? That has been such a conversation point lately, and they're not giving guidelines. I actually was on um, a presentation about a month ago from a pretty selective school where this was brought up, and they shared that their kind of saying is between anything that's 300,000 and below. That was an off the cuff number, so I didn't I'm not putting it out there publicly, but it's a very vague comment. I would call the schools, maybe on the phone or in an email. They will give more information. I would think anything above 500,000, they are not going to be considered typical. And again, if you are on the lower end of the household income, meaning like a lot of these schools giving free tuition, the cutoff is around 200,000 in income, maybe 250,000. I would think if you are close to the cutoff, then they're going to scrutinize your assets a little bit more. But if you're lower, then there might be like they're probably going to expect that a lower income family of like 100,000 household income the typical assets might be for them, are about 200,000 or less. But sorry, I wish I had better information on that. Crazy question, but if you get merit for 4 years, but then apply for financial aid, would that merit still stand? That's actually not a crazy question, and it's good to understand. So basically, legally, the college cannot offer you money, whether it's need-based aid or merit, that combined is going to be more than the cost of attendance. So if you were offered merit and then you become eligible for need-based aid, it actually would be the discretion of the college, or maybe something you could work out with the college. But one of those things is going to have to change, because if the need-based aid and the merit are going to put you over the cost of attendance, you can't receive both. Personally, if it depends on what your situation is. Some people might want to say, I want to keep the merit and get less in need-based aid, because remember, need-based aid is going to vary year to year based on your FAFSA / SAI. So merit money is more stable, and you can count on you can project out what that merit money is going to be for all 4 years. Okay, wait, let's see this. I got two other questions over here in the Q&A. Is there a way to see how a university determines weighted GPA? I've read they do it a little differently. My son's high school only reports unweighted GPA, so it makes it difficult to see possible merit opportunities. I would say that the majority of colleges are using unweighted GPA. That's because, to this person's point, so many colleges have so many different ways they do weighting. That's why colleges usually take the core classes and they are recalculating it to figure out what the unweighted GPA is. So I would just be clear on anything. So usually, again, what colleges are reporting are unweighted GPA. I showed you Miami University because it's just unusual, but they also kind of made a note to say that it was weighted. If it's unclear on any college website of what the GPA is that they were listed, you have to ask. I mean, Obviously, if they're showing something that's over a 4.0, then it's weighted, but I would always ask for clarification. Is there a better way to show only weighted GPA in the transcript to have a better chance at scholarship? I wouldn't whatever your school sends as a transcript, that's kind of their decision, what they have made as a school. So, that's something you'd have to talk to the school guidance counselor directly. And again, whether it's weighted or not, if the school likes to compare unweighted, then they're going to take your students' grades and they're going to recalculate it to be unweighted. For assets, are they going to reduce it by the amount of mortgage? I think I already answered that. For the FAFSA, your mortgage is not included. If your student is applying to some schools that are CSS profile, which actually is another filter in Insights. Some people, depending on your situation, don't want to apply to schools that are asking for the CSS profile. So you can filter and filter out the CSS profile schools. So that's just something to think about. But the CSS schools, majority of them are going to consider your home equity. Would your 101 consult still be to help a high-income family whose son's stats are low and merit scholarships would be difficult to get? So, I mean, in that situation for a 101 consult, we would probably, look at your financial situation, obviously confirm. It sounds like that you think you're only going to get merit, and we could still help you, figure out what schools there might be out there that offer merit where your student has a chance of getting it. Your student, and maybe to better answer this question, is your student doesn't have to be a really strong, 4.0, 34, ACT type of student to get merit. There are schools where the 75th percentile, is, could be a 27. In terms of an ACT. So it's all about how your student stacks up against that school's academic profile, not that your student has to be this brilliant elite student and they're the only ones who get merit. A lot of students get merit. And in your case, and I don't know your student, Terry, but don't know if they took test scores. Maybe they perform better on an ACT or an SAT than what their GPA shows. So we'd have to kind of look at, your whole situation to give you better advice. But, a 1 hour session could definitely be very helpful for not a ton of money. Okay, everybody. Thanks for those hanging on. I'm going to go get lunch, but hopefully this was helpful. We will have another session in a few weeks where I go over the common data set. So that's like another variation of information you need to do. So basically, we kind of rotate through these types of presentations. One that talks about merit scholarships in general, another that digs into the common data set, and a third is we're going to go through the different reports that we're developing to help people kind of digest this information. It's a lot of information. I'll say one last thing. Of course, a big question has been, well, can't AI help me with this? Yes and no. I'm, not going to say don't go to AI to ask it about certain colleges, but AI doesn't have access to the common data set. It's information that is just not something that it pulls in. So and the other thing I've seen personally, kind of testing out AI, it will give you some suggestions without a doubt, but it won't give you your full kind of universe of options. It might only give like 3, and then it turns out, that there actually might be 15 colleges that fit the criteria. So again, just something to think about. It's another tool in the toolbox, but I wouldn't use it as your only research that you're doing. Okay, what if your income in the year of enrollment is dramatically lower than the prior year income? So that's another last question. So in that case, that's you would have to appeal your student's offer. The financial aid process only uses what they call prior year. So it's going to be 2 years before the year your student starts college. So if your students is an 11th grader, they're going to start college in the fall of 2027. So the taxes and the income that the FAFSA is going to use is going to be from 2025. And yes, in those 2 years, for some people, there could be dramatic changes. What you can do is you have to go through the financial aid process. The college, will send the offer, and then at that point, you basically have to reveal that, and you might be able to do it earlier. It depends on the college that. You have financial, hardship or change financial circumstances, and you have to go through their appeal process. So, wish it was easier. Whenever I think of my daughter and her college applications and the financial burden on her parents, I feel so much stress and pressure. We are a typical middle class family who wouldn't receive any need-based aid, and the colleges she wants to go to are so very expensive, like 90,000 a year. As a sticker price recession made me breathe a little easier. I'll continue my research. Thank you so much. Oh, nice to hear that. I hope it gave you a little bit more sense of calm. I, yes, the college prices are keep going up, but it just means you have to do a little bit more work and more research and start it early. I feel pretty confident most families can find a school at a much lower price than 90,000. That is still going to be a good school for your student, but it's not going to be like, like that. You're going to have to do iterations of research and look for those scholarships that can really bring down the cost. Thank you, everyone. See you soon.